So here's something a bit different today. This is not an Enyaq. It's got lots of things that are familiar. The buttons down here are very familiar. The steering wheel is identical. It's even got flappy paddles. This dash is a little bit different. So I've got my sat nav on there. This screen is currently an Android Auto, so that's very, very similar. Actually, that wasn't Android Auto. So Laura's here. Everything's good. But this is not an Enyaq. Can you guess what it is? Okay, before I set off, let's have a look at the data. So the car, the garage just told me it had a full tank of fuel, but it's driven 32 miles since it was last refueled. It's averaging 39.6 miles per gallon. I'm sure that's below what it's said in WLTP figures. I've started just around the corner from the garage, so 3 miles per hour is my average. I've driven for 13 minutes. Or rather it's been on for 13 minutes with the ignition, 24.3 miles per gallon. So let's see how we get on. I've got to drive up to Dundee today, spend a couple of days up there. It's got a range of 440 miles. Let's see how I get on once I get to Dundee. How much of my range will I have used? Hi there, welcome back to the channel, which, if you've been here before, is all about the user experience of driving and owning a Skoda Enyaq, which is the electric SUV, estate, crossover, call it what you will, from Skoda. I've owned two of them now and I've been absolutely delighted with them. I have also previously owned a Tesla Model 3, a Renault Zoe and a Nissan Leaf, so I know a little bit about EVs and what it's like to live with them. But today I am not in an Enyaq. I am in another Skoda, and it's quite confusing. I am in a Skoda Octavia. So my car has got the 12-volt battery problem, which is pretty well known about in Skoda circles. I'll talk more about that later on. But in the meantime, the dealer, which is West End Garage in Edinburgh, and they've been a great experience for me so far. They didn't really know about the 12-volt issue until Skoda UK got in touch with them and explained what the problem was, and they are now taking that on board and fixing it. They actually booked my car in for 3 days so that they could see how the fault would develop, and they therefore organised a courtesy car for me, and this is it. So how's the trip to Dundee gone? Well, I have travelled 64 miles, and if you remember when I left I had a range of 440 miles. And it looks like the Octavia's range prediction is even more off than the Enyaq's. And the Enyaq, to be fair, is pretty good. So I left with 440, travelled 64 miles, and it's gone up by 30 miles. You really shouldn't believe range predictors ever. Look at the fuel gauge, and this tank is still pretty full. So, what is it like as an Enyaq owner driving a different Skoda? And this one is a petrol Skoda. So it's a 1.5 TSI, it's got a DSG automatic gearbox, and I have to say it's very nice. I have in the past owned 6 different Octavias over the years, from 1998 through until 2015 was my last one. And they're great cars. They're not a patch on an Enyaq though, really not. This is much better than the Octavia I had. Obviously it's more modern, it's what, 10 years more modern. So it's got some developments, and there are really nice touches about it. The confusing thing, if you're an Enyaq owner driving one of these as I am, is that so much of it looks and feels like the Enyaq. The software on the screen is pretty much identical. The steering wheel is identical. The layout on the dash, the switches, is identical. The lighting switch is identical. So it looks and feels very much like an Enyaq. The central dash, it's much more detailed. I'll show you that in a second. In fact, I'll spin the camera around now. So you can see here lots more information on there. It's very, very configurable. You can have your navigation in the center. It's not actually, there's an awful lot to be done here. It's not the Google Maps, which is on there. It is the native sat nav, and there's no way I can find to put the Google Maps on the center. It's handy having that there, but if I'm using Google Maps, I really don't want that. But you can turn it off, so you can have stuff that looks very like the Enyaq in terms of your efficiency and your consumption. And as you can see there, you can have all sorts of other stuff. So that's all good. As you can see here, paddles on the steering wheel, and that's where a lot of the confusion comes in for me, because if you've got these on your Enyaq, you probably drive like me, and there's a video I've done showing how to get efficiency out of the car. You use these paddles to slow down or then to increase the coasting and basically get better efficiency. The screen here, all very similar, and as you can see here, these are similar, but the paddles, when you change those, it basically starts changing gears. So it takes it out of the automatic gearbox and puts it into manual. I don't know how that works. It got quite confusing, because obviously I thought I was going to slow the car down. All I did was change down the gear, which, yeah, it does slow the car down, but obviously if you've ever been driving at kind of 40 and then drop it into second gear, then you'll know that it makes quite a noise and the car complains about it. So it's a little discombobulating. But other than that, it's actually a really, really good car. Now, one thing that has occurred to me, well, actually, the other thing that is quite confusing, or it's disconcerting. In an Enyaq, when you stop to traffic lights or a junction or whatever, you put your foot on the brake, and then after a little time, auto hold kicks in, and basically it's like the handbrake going on. So you can take your foot off the brake and just rest it, and nothing will happen. This car, obviously, you put your foot on the brake, it comes to a halt in exactly the same way. Take your foot off it, and it starts driving forwards again, which can be quite entertaining if you're in a queue of traffic. So, what other points? I think the only other point I would make is that efficiency, range. Now, when you raise the topic of EVs on the internet, people start going on about, oh, in the wintertime, that's the range that it says in the brochure, but you'll get nothing like that in the wintertime. The implication being that their normal car, conventional ICE car, doesn't suffer that. Well, that's just not true. So I had a look this morning on the Skoda website. This car, 1.5 TSI, is claimed to have a combined average of 57.6, I think it was, but 57 miles per gallon. And long term, what has this car been doing? Don't know if you can see that there. That's 44.7 miles per gallon. So it's not delivering what it says in the brochure. So the next time anyone starts going on about EVs or your Enyaq not having the range, there's proof. Petrol cars don't do it either. Since I refueled, and I have been driving quite efficiently, 47.3. Since I started this morning, 39.1. So that was only 6 miles. I was coming from over in Fife into Dundee this morning, and it's only done 6 miles. And look at that, I wasn't held up in traffic, I wasn't racing on motorways, I was driving a fairly efficient way, using all the same sort of tactics that I do in my Enyaq, and I only got 39.1 miles per gallon. It is 5.5 degrees, and obviously you're getting a range reduction. But the other thing is the range prediction down here. Now, when I picked the car up, which was, let me see, that was probably about 80 miles ago, it said 440 miles. I drove from Edinburgh up here to Dundee, which was 66 miles, and the range had gone from 440 to 470. So the range had gone up again because the car is learning how you are. That's the same as the Enyaq. The prediction will learn your driving style. So when I picked this car up, it had been used for lots of little local trips. Those are inefficient in this car as they are in an EV, and therefore the efficiency was fairly poor. I then drove it in a nice controlled manner using cruise control, travel assist on the M90 at motorway speeds, and the efficiency picked up, and therefore the range increased. So people get really upset about range, really obsessed about range. It's just a prediction that the computer is making. Please don't get too hung up on it. In this car, I don't have percentage. I've got a fuel gauge. In the Enyaq, you've got a percentage. Go by that and refuel when you need to refuel, whether it's petrol, whether it's diesel, or whether it's electrons. It doesn't really make any difference. It's the same approach. Other than that, this is a really good car. It's very well built. It's got some of the touches that are in the new Enyaq. in the sense that the chrome, this is all shiny chrome in the Enyaq, or certainly in my Enyaq. Around here, this is all very silvery bright chrome. This is now the new dull finish, which looks really good, and more importantly, it will not reflect sunlight, so you won't get dazzled by glimpse of or glints of sunlight coming and bouncing and dazzling you. So it's actually really good. I'm not really sure what spec this is, but it's pretty well equipped. It's got the DSG gearbox, it's got the remote boot opening, same as my car. That's been a little bit inconsistent in terms of using the key fob to shut it, but in terms of unlocking when I walk up, locking when I walk away, the car's doing all that perfectly, just like my Enyaq does. There are a couple of little touches which I'll show you in a second under the bonnet, which are a little bit different and are better than the Enyaq. But other than that, yeah, it's good. It's a really good car, but it's not an Enyaq. It's no patch on an Enyaq, and the driving experience is nowhere near as good, nowhere near as refined. I don't like automatic gearboxes. Perhaps if it was a manual car it would be different, but driving an EV, people say they're automatic. No, it's smooth, linear progression of the torque. In this thing, it's all the things I hate about an automatic gearbox, where it's getting up to a point and I would be wanting to change gear, but the car takes its time and then does it, and it's just not as, I don't enjoy it as much as a way to drive. But this is a very, very good car. It's just not as good as an Enyaq. So I've had an update from Skoda UK, and they tell me that the dealer is going to receive a new battery today, a 12-volt battery for my car, and that will be fitted, and I will be able to return this car, the Octavia, and get my own car back. It's a lovely day outside, as you can maybe see. So, how has this car been? Well, it's been a bit of a confusing experience as an Enyaq owner, because so many of the controls are identical. But it's been not bad overall. I really don't like automatic cars though. It's I feel the car is sluggish, and when you're trying to put your foot down to do anything like move into it, or turn across a junction or overtake, there's that pause which in a manual car you just wouldn't get, and certainly in an EV you don't get. How has it been? Well, it has done 182 miles. It has averaged, over that, it has averaged 44.9 miles per gallon. Now, the published figure for this car is 56 miles per gallon, so that is about, mental math, about a 30% reduction on what it should be, so it's underachieving by 30%. But it's certainly not been an unpleasant thing to drive. I have been having to go shuttling backwards and forwards between Edinburgh and Dundee for the last couple of days, in fact for the last week, due to my mum having been admitted to hospital up there. So it's actually been quite a good experience to test this car out. I'm just about to go and refill it because I have to send it back obviously full. So for 182 miles, how much has that cost me? In the Enyaq, that would be probably about £2.50. I'm willing to bet it's going to cost me more than £2.50 to fill this up. I am going to go to Tesco, so I'm not using premium fuel. I'm going to use about the cheapest there is available. The other option would be to go to Costco, but that's at the far side of Edinburgh and I'm not going to go there. So I'm going to nip along to Tesco locally here just now, fill it up with Tesco's petrol, and I will see how that cost is compared. Is it going to be more than £2.50? Probably. Right, so was it £2.50? No, it was over £33 for 280 miles, which is quite astonishing. And actually, of the what have we got? 8 pumps here in the petrol station. 5 of them have got no fuel available. So for people who talk about EV charge points being out of use, the petrol infrastructure is pretty rubbish. Here's something that the Enyaq could really usefully use. So if you've watched my video on how to drive the Enyaq efficiently, you will have seen that I talk about using Eco Assist, and there's a symbol which does confuse a lot of people of a little foot coming off the throttle. What the car is doing then is coasting, and as you can see there, this car did say coasting. So here's an idea, Skoda. Why don't you copy the software from the Octavia onto the Enyaq, and that would actually make the car a lot more intuitive to use. So you can see the consumption's going up and down there as I drive. 24, 23, not great. if I lift my foot off the throttle in the manner that I drive my Enyaq, it's coasting. That is actually a really, really good feature. And it's something that they could use on the Enyaq. Okay, here is one more thing that is surprising about the interior of this Skoda Enyaq. Skoda Octavia. So, it looks very similar to an Enyaq, and actually I thought this here was probably the equivalent of the loft trim on the Enyaq, which is a sort of, I think it's recycled plastics and wool, and I'm not sure how else it's made up, but it's a soft to the touch material, and that looks the same. But when you touch it, that's actually plastic. That's smooth. There's no texture whatsoever. So it looks like a fabric, but it isn't. And then up above it, you've got the Alcantara over there. So it's a really nice finish. But that was really surprising, because I mean, who actually goes around touching the surfaces in their car? Car reviewers always go on about, oh, it's scratchy, or it's soft, or it's whatever. But actually, that one, to my eye, looked like it was soft, and it was fabric, but it's anything but. It's rock hard plastic, but it looks really good. Anyway, total stats for the car: 44.9 miles per gallon, and this car's only done just over 2,000 miles, and I've put well, it had under 2,000 on it when I got it, so I've put a couple of hundred on there. So overall, it's an excellent car. It really is. It's a cracking petrol car, but it's not an electric car, and it's confirmed in my mind that actually I really do prefer having an electric car. There is no way I would go back to one of these. There's lots of polls in social media saying that so many percentage of EV drivers would go back to a petrol car. No, this is a very good one. It's probably the best petrol Skoda I've ever driven, and no, it doesn't match up with the Enyaq in any way. Although the interior, very similar. Anyway, hopefully that's of some use, and I will see you in another video soon. As ever, if you've got any queries, questions, anything you want raised in videos in future, do let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you soon.